you did your book. You wrote your book, Topless in Tokyo, but it's also not just a book. Can you tell us a little bit more about how the idea came about and how that combines with your musical background?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm not topless in any of the book. So if anybody's wondering,
that's good.
It's like, good Lord,
not that
got
kind
this
of book.
tuba player on here that wrote a topless book. I do not want to see a tuba player topless. That does not happen at all in the book.
It's not the sales pitch.
Yeah. So it started in a couple. There was probably two things happening at the same time that came together to make this book happen. I mean, Kevin, there's been this kind of long. I mean, we've been on the road together. There's been this long going joke that anytime we're on the road, you have all this extra time. We tend to tell stories and stuff like that and just keep each other busy. And I never thought about it, but I've always had, I guess, these kind of crazy stories about in my earlier years, like in my 20s and stuff, when I was touring with different groups and different artists and stuff that we've come across. And it was our mutual friend Drew Tucker, vibraphone player, who was like, dude, you got to write this stuff down, man. Like this stuff is gold. And I already, at that time I'd already published a book before, so the thought of doing another book was not like a scary thing to me. I'm like, okay, well, why would anybody want to just hear it wasn't enough there for me to like actually act on it. So and then I'm going back and at the same time I'm recording an album, and I've realized that my strong point from a sales perspective has been my books. That's one of my most successful things, is just my book sales as a musician, and not necessarily the music. So, and at the same time, I had this predicament of like, look, it's hard to sell a physical CD nowadays. I don't have a CD player. If someone gave me a CD, I have no device to play it on. So am I going to release it? How am I going to release this music? And then it just dawned on me, literally all the songs that we're writing were songs that were about the stories that I were telling. A song like the song Otage in Haiti, about the story when I was held hostage in Haiti, and a song about this orchestra thing about when I played this gig with this, and it's all these crazy stories. I wrote music behind it, and I'm like, duh, this makes total sense. Let me just release this whole thing as a book, and then people buy the book, and then they have like a download code. They download the music. So it's essentially, for lack of better words, a big liner notes. Like it's like bringing the liner notes back around, because I feel like the story behind the music, to me, I always love that stuff. I love reading the liner notes. I want to know what someone's inspiration is behind this story, behind whatever they did. And that's what I wanted to do. So it's, you can read it as a book and it's cool. You could just read the book, or you could just listen to music, and I wanted it to stand alone by itself. But it is in a product that, it's a physical paperback book that, it's made to like be a comical thing. You can put on your coffee table and read, or put on your toilet, or wherever you're, it's interesting. And there's a lot of anecdote stuff in there. There's stories that, the kind of things you don't want your mother-in-law to hear, the stuff I wasn't ever planning on putting out, but it was really neat adventure. And I got to give Drew the credit, because it was kind of his idea to put it all together into this one product, or at least to release that material that I thought I would just kind of be buried into long car trips and car rides and stuff like that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
How did you find that when now that you have that out, now that it's released, how did you find, when it comes to maybe the music business side, how did it being both a book and an album, did that help it? Did you find that it was easier to, kind of for it to reach larger audiences because you combined the two formats?
Yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, there's probably a couple of reasons behind that. One, like I said earlier, I feel like my bigger strength comes in the book thing, because for most people, most musicians have not published a book. And to me, that doesn't make me any more special than anybody else, but I've done it. And that was like a thing that separated me from anybody else. So in terms of marketing it, it's like, hey, there's this new book that's also an album. There was almost like the shock factor of it, of like, whoa, I got to see what this is. I have no idea. So I had more people, you release an album, and most people, and nowadays, at least for me, like I'm gonna go stream it. And if it's someone I really appreciate, I'm gonna go support them in some way I can, whether I'm just buying the album or buy merch or whatever. But a lot of people don't necessarily do that. So I think it was a lot of that X factor of it just being something completely different. Like, oh, this is a new thing. I just want to check this out. And that was like kind of the hot commodity. And then on top of that, having that experience of having released a book before and knowing how to push that. And again, but I think it all goes back to the X factor thing of just being something different, which is that's everything for me. Being a tuba player, like anything I do is going to be different just by the instrument that I play.
Yeah, Bill, maybe you could touch a little bit more on how you actually went about releasing that. If any other musicians checking this out would be interested in that process, if they've never, like you said, never released a book, where might they begin?
Yeah, so it's really easy. I mean, you have a couple options when releasing a book. You can go and hunt out a publisher, or you can do it yourself. And there's a lot of online print-on-demand things, and that's honestly what I did. And there's no shame in that. You release a book, unless you're like a really big person and a huge name, you're like a James Patterson or something. You release a book, you have a big following, a big company. You have a publisher, all that stuff's taken care of. For me, I didn't have any of that. But what I did have is the fact that, I have this website that I literally found, and I researched different print-on-demand sites. Going back to my first book, when I first released it, I literally printed probably 300 books. And you just go online, and it literally guides you through the whole process of like, all right, you could do this. There's companies like Amazon that does it nowadays. And you just Google print on demand, and you'll find things that guide you through the process. The difficult part to me comes within the formatting and putting it all together. Like coming up with the information was easy, but like actually saying, okay, this is the book format it needs to fit, and this is the kind of thing that it has to go by. To me, that was like this biggest learning curve as a musician, figuring that out. But the actual printing part of it was really easy. I sent it out, uploaded like a PDF, and I get a draft book back, and I look at it and say, well, that's terrible. I got to fix this, this, and this. And I probably did that 3 or 4 times until I had the final draft. So it was just literally me. And then I took all of my friends and family, and I gave them a copy of the book and a big red marker. Editor team, like, you're all going to edit this book for me. So I handed out like 10 books of people that I thought had good literacy skills, and to just go and edit everything. And they just gave it back to me. And then I went and made a whole bunch of adjustments, didn't realize how bad my grammar was, and then just fixed a lot of the adjustments. And then that was the book. And the beautiful thing about that is with the print on demand, you can, if you go back and realize that there's something that you did make a mistake, you can always change it for the next round that you're about to order. So if anybody is looking to do something like that, I always recommend doing a small batch up front. Like, you're tempted to just, because you get discounts in bulk. So it's easy to say, like, I want to order a bunch, but start with something simple like 20 books, because by the time you sell those 20 books, you realize that, oh my gosh, there's some like big thing I need to fix here. And it's easy to turn around, and they come quick. I mean, it's not as fast as Amazon, but you wait a week and you got 100 books there, or 200, 300, whatever you want.
So, Bill, you were actually holding the like physical copies yourself and then selling those like to people you knew?
Yeah. So with this one, I sold it. I held the merch myself, and then I set up an account with like USPS where I could print my own postage. Because every time you get, anybody who does merch stuff, you get an order and it's like a blessing and a curse. You're like, great, I got a new sale online. It's like, I got to go mail this thing now, Yeah. So I didn't want to have to deal with that. I wanted it to be super automated. So I had it set up where I would just get an order and it would automatically populate the print and label thing. So like twice a week, I would just print them all out, and I had them all prepackaged, ready to go, and I just dropped them in their mailbox. I didn't have to go to the post office. So that was easy for that one. The first book I did, I actually had more of a distribution plan, and I sold it on my Japan tour across Japan, and I linked up with a production company to do that one. But this one was just purely by myself, kind of just selling it out of my studio, essentially.
Cool. Yeah, I think those details will help.